I had surgery yesterday. I've made it 32 years on this earth without ever needing surgery, but I guess time comes for all of us at some point. As I was being wheeled into the operating theater, I was struck by thoughts of the mysteries of the human body. Realistically, outside of a severe issue, none of us will ever see the inside of our bodies. So as I lay here now in bed, convalescing, I wanted to tell you about a medical mystery that's still discussed in hushed tones by doctors and nurses all over the country. I want to talk to you about Gloria Ramirez, also known as the Toxic Woman. She's in full renal failure and cardiac arrest. This is the endgame of her stage 4 cervical cancer. Her home care nurse knows this and calls an ambulance as a last desperate life-saving measure. She arrives at Riverside Hospital and is seen to immediately. Triage begins and pure oxygen is pumped directly into her lungs and a full suite of sedatives are employed. Initially, medical professionals in the room notice some odd symptoms. Ramirez is covered in what will later be described as an oily film, and others will observe that her breath has a fruity garlic smell. Registered nurse Suzanne Kane then begins a blood draw on Ramirez's arm, and all hell breaks loose. Upon removing the syringe, Kane remarks that it smells of ammonia. This is corroborated by 3 other medical professionals in the room with Ramirez. They also report strange manila-colored particles floating in the blood. As Kane moves across the room, she suddenly faints, falling to the ground. Another nurse goes down as well, followed by a third. At this time, the attending physician orders an evacuation of staff and patients in the ER. They all file out and regroup in the parking lot to remove their clothes, stuffing them in hazardous material bags. A team of medical professionals don hazmat gear and converge on Ramirez's room. Undeterred by the strange illness she seems to have inflicted on the staff, they begin their best efforts to save her life. After 45 minutes of CPR and defibrillator use, Gloria sadly passes away. Although Ramirez was dead, official cause of death was kidney failure brought on by cancer. There was still a lingering spirit of sorts in Riverside Hospital. All in all, 23 people were in some way affected by Ramirez. 5 would remain hospitalized for days following direct exposure to her. The symptoms were all the same: nausea, lightheadedness, shortness of breath, and muscle spasms. An investigation commenced. Initially, Ramirez's body was sequestered in a separate room, double-wrapped in plastic body bags. Later, her body would be moved to an airtight metal container. Doctors Anna Marie Osorio and Kristen Waller were brought in to oversee the investigation into the strange illnesses connected to Ramirez. They would go on to interview over 30 people who had been in the hospital during Ramirez's final moments. Blood tests were conducted on those affected, which surprisingly came back completely normal. There seemed to be no lasting evidence of what had afflicted them. At the conclusion of the investigation, Osorio and Waller released their findings. They believed that the whole situation was a case of mass hysteria. After Nurse Kane fainted, they believed it caused a kind of domino effect in the others present. To see a career RN go out cold, they must have believed that it was something dangerous, and their minds did the rest of the heavy lifting. Those present don't buy that theory. The Riverside Coroner's Office sought out more answers and brought in Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory for a scientific analysis of the situation. Their findings constitute what most people familiar with the Ramirez case believe to be the cause of the unexplained illnesses. They came to the conclusion that Ramirez must have been using a substance named dimethyl sulfoxide as a pain reliever, also known as DMSO. DMSO is a commercial degreaser sold in auto parts stores. Had she been using DMSO, it would have reacted poorly to the life-saving measures taken in the hospital. DMSO would explain her garlicky breath and the oily film on her body. DMSO in the blood would have interacted poorly with the sedatives, essentially crystallizing her blood and breaking it down into dimethyl sulfate, a chemical which can cause the symptoms reported by the ER staff. This, of course, is just a theory, as no one was able to prove that Ramirez had been taking DMSO. Her family definitely didn't buy that theory, and after her body was released to them, they hired an independent pathologist to examine her body. Unfortunately, time was not on their side, and her body was badly decomposed and her organs had become contaminated with feces. Also, for some reason, her heart was missing completely. Some believe there was a cover-up of sorts at Riverside Hospital. The missing heart, the contaminated organs, and the original syringe Nurse Kane had used to draw the blood that would kick this whole thing off was missing, and would never be found. Officially, Ramirez's death remains as kidney failure. Her family doesn't believe this, and neither do many in the medical and scientific community. We will probably never fully know the circumstances surrounding that February trip to Riverside Hospital. Gloria Ramirez is buried in Riverside Olivewood Cemetery and, despite the rumors, is not buried in a lead coffin. But, what do you think? Was this a case of mass hysteria, or was Gloria Ramirez truly toxic? Let me know in the comments or on Twitter at Unsolved. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you like this content, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.